A second passport from any country can be a great plan B and open up a whole new world of opportunities. But many people like European Union country passports because they open up access to about 30 different countries. And today, I'm going to tell you how you can get arguably Europe's best second passport for free without making a donation and potentially paying very little or even zero in taxes. Every year we publish the Nomad Passport Index. You can check it out at nomadcapitalist.com. And one of the highest ranking passports on that index is that of Ireland. Ireland has a unique position in Europe in that it has a long-standing agreement with the UK to allow free movement between the Republic of Ireland and the United Kingdom, which means both Irish and British citizens can live in each other's countries. We're seeing some of our own British clients asking about a soft landing moving to Ireland, where they don't have to learn a new language, they don't have to adapt that much culturally, they can enjoy the same weather, and they're close to home and on the same time zone, because the UK is getting rid of its non-dom tax program, whereas Ireland still has a non-dom tax program. That's going to feature in to how you can get a passport. Now, if you are British, or if you already have a European Union member state passport, well, then Irish citizenship isn't going to help you. But if you're American, Canadian, Australian, or for anywhere else in the world, and you're looking for a relatively fast way to get citizenship, but you don't want to make a donation in Europe, then Ireland could be an option. And so you have the flexibility as an Irish citizen to live in any of the other European countries. I've met people in the streets of Dublin who've come up to me and said, "Hey, Andrew, I love what you talk about. You've inspired me. I'm moving to Portugal. I'm moving to Spain. I'm moving to Poland for up-and-coming opportunities there." Others, of course, do choose to leave the European Union entirely. And having an Irish passport is very well respected all around the world. One of the things that I've been telling you with all the geopolitical chaos going on is it's good to have a neutral passport. And Ireland, pretty well respected. They've been neutral. They are not in NATO. They're a country that is small and nimble. And that can be tax friendly if you live there. But if you don't live there, who has a beef with the Irish for the most part, compared to the US or the UK or other countries which take a heavier hand geopolitically? I'll take being Irish any day if you want to travel or live globally. You're not going to have any problems as an Irish citizen. But certainly, if your idea is to live in Europe and you're one of the folks who likes the idea of being in Europe, then an Irish passport helps with that. Now, there's two ways to do this. We've talked for years about citizenship by descent. Rosie O'Donnell right now, for example, is doing this. You can generally go back 2 generations, in limited cases 3 generations in your family tree. So Rosie O'Donnell has a grandmother from Ireland. She's going and claiming that passport. This is the one a la carte service we offer. You go to nomadcapitalist.com/CBD, and we can help you get a passport in Ireland or any number of European as well as Latin American countries by descent, okay? Whether it's 1, 2, 3, sometimes even 4 generations back, you can claim those passports. Don't wait. But if you're Irish ancestry, generally that's 2 years. That's not what I'm talking. If you can get that, you can get that relatively quickly. You do not need to live in Ireland. You should take advantage of pretty much any ancestry passport you can get, Ireland or otherwise. However, if you do not qualify for citizenship by ancestry, you can move to Ireland and you can get citizenship more quickly than in most European countries on a tax-friendly basis, and it can be a soft landing. They speak your language of English. The cultural, I think, is relatively similar for a lot of folks who are watching this. I would argue if you're coming from Boston or Toronto, the culture may be more similar in Dublin to what you would get if you moved to parts of Texas or parts of Saskatchewan, for example. And I think people often overlook that. They think that different countries must have more different cultures than within their own country. But what makes this work is, number one, you as a non-EU, non-EEA citizen can go to Ireland and you can start a business. There's a number of different ways to immigrate. They did get rid of their investment migration program shortly after the Russia-Ukraine war. So you can no longer simply invest €1 million. The good news is if you have a business, you can open a business in Ireland and you can hire a relatively low ratio of Irish workers. So if you have no other path to move there, let's say an Irish spouse or something like that, you can go and you can start a business. This doesn't have to be your entire business. This can be part of your business. This can be a company that provides services to your business. Let's say you have a factory at home in Canada. You can say, listen, I want to open a company here. We're going to hire a handful of folks to provide some service to my existing business. And I'm going to hire myself as an employee. And to get a residence permit, I'm going to have to hire someone else in Ireland. And you know what? Hey, hire a handful of people. I think that for sales jobs, for example, Ireland could be a good place. One thing we tell our clients who are going truly international is if you have an international business and you hire salespeople in the U.S., you're going to have a potential very serious U.S. tax issue. Ireland, through an Irish company, could provide sales services with some pretty good salespeople to your global company, and you could get a residence permit in exchange for doing that. So you get the residence permit. You don't have to invest a lot of money. You don't have to invest €1 million. And there may be, depending on how your business is run, some other tax benefits to that. You're going to move money into your Irish company to pay your own salary. And so this is the one cost that you might have in terms of getting this passport, is if you do not have an Irish spouse or a European spouse, by the way. There is a way to get this passport potentially for free that would largely hinge, I think, on having either an Irish spouse or a spouse who has another European citizenship they could move to and register to Ireland and then bring you along with them. And so in that case, you wouldn't need the immigration permission from the business. And if you did it that way, then the tax program I'll lay out in a minute would potentially allow you to pay as little as $0 in tax. If you have to start the business, your business may pay some small amount of tax. Ireland, for most small businesses, still charges 12.5% on any profits. And if you're running as a part of your organization, you may not have that much profit in your company. So you'll pay some small amount of tax on the 12.5% level, and then you will pay tax on your salary. Ireland's taxes on salaries go up to 52%. It's not cheap. But if, let's say, you're paying yourself, €100,000 a year salary, that satisfies the conditions for your entry into Ireland. You hire some other people at market level salaries, which sure, it's going to be more expensive than other countries we've historically talked about. Whether we hire in Colombia and we hire in, Thailand and we hire in Georgia and Serbia. Yes, Ireland is going to cost you more, particularly Dublin. If you get out, further out where it's less international, you can pay less, but obviously you're going to have less of an international talent pool. So you're going to get the residence permit. Unless you have that European spouse, you're going to get a residence permit by starting a business. You're going to pay that yourself that salary. Let's say on €100,000, you're probably looking at 35,000 euros in annual tax. Okay. Now, if you're coming from the U.S. or Canada, you're already paying some tax on that. And by moving to Ireland, you can move yourself into a tax treaty country where potentially your overall taxes are going to go down dramatically. The bottom line is, you open your company, you pay yourself a salary, you hire some other people, you build it into your global structure. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways you could do that. We'll get to that in a minute. And you're going to pay, again, if you don't have the spouse to rely on, or some other way to immigrate to Ireland where you don't need permission, you're going to pay some tax. Let's call it $35,000 a year. You're going to spend the majority of your time in Ireland, so you're going to be an Irish taxpayer. However, you're going to rely on the Irish non-dom tax system. The UK has got rid of its non-dom program. Malta and Cyprus still have theirs. Cyprus does have a fast track to citizenship for certain people who are professionals. But Malta, for example, while they do have a donation-based citizenship program that takes 18 months, generally it's going to take you about 18 years to naturalize and get citizenship. So for global reputation, quality of the passport, because Cypriots, for example, they do not have visa-free access to the U.S. yet. I think that may be resolved in the near future, but right now they don't. Irish can go pretty much everywhere in the world. It is a superior passport to much of what's out there. It's, again, a very well-trusted passport, and you can get that after 5 years of residence. And the naturalization process is more straightforward. What my experience has been in Ireland, and I've seen this, for 15 years. I, first met someone a long time ago who lived in Ireland as a foreigner, and I would go to the immigration office with them. I mean, compared to what you see in the U.S., these people, it's like getting a back massage. I mean, these are some of the nicest, most responsive people. I saw a case where, they made a mistake at the government level, and the lawyer emailed the government officer, and within like 48 hours, oh, yeah, we're very sorry, we made a mistake. We fixed it, and you're approved, and your card's on its way. I mean, my experience with people, people in Ireland will say they have bureaucracy. You compare it to a lot of Western countries, and the bureaucracy from an immigration standpoint is very reasonable. and they can be very friendly. And I think that they're pretty much open-minded to people from a lot of places in the world. And so you go and you get that residence permit. By the way, compared to like a citizenship by investment program, the document collection process for Ireland can be more straightforward and can be a little more flexible. It's just a place where there is a strictness in some ways. There's also a flexibility in some ways. Now, here's where it works. Ireland's non-dom program means money that you earn overseas that's not remitted to Ireland is not taxed. So your salary is an Irish source salary. You're going to pay tax on that salary if you need that to get into the country. Again, if you need to move money into your company to pay salaries, there's some excess to that, you will pay that 12.5% tax on that excess. But if your business runs somewhere else and you don't need to live in Ireland on that money, then that money can stay overseas. On top of that, you can also appoint an account that you had before you moved to Ireland and say, hey, here's a pot of money that I had before I came here, and I'm going to be able to remit that money on a tax-free basis because I had it before I moved. Now, you need to have a separate account for that. And again, this is not tax advice. We're not going to get too detailed into it. But let's say you have, $3 million sitting around. You can remit that $3 million that was that you had before you moved to Ireland tax-free. And so to someone saying, well, hey, I don't want to pay 52% on that upper level of my salary. I got to live. Ireland is not a cheap place to live. So, hey, 100,000 euro salary minus 35,000 euros in tax. I'm going to have a hard time living on that. You might. But you can bring in money that you had before you moved. And so the more money that you have accumulated already that could be remitted in, you could use that money to buy a house. You could use that money to pay living expenses. You could use that money to do whatever you want. You can continue to earn, once you live in Ireland, money in your offshore companies. In most offshore investments, there are certain kinds of investments that do get sucked into the Irish tax net in certain ways after a certain number of years. It is a bit more complicated tax system that requires lots of review. This is not just, move to Qatar and it's all solved. So the benefit of Ireland is you can get a passport that's top quality rather quickly. The downside is, it is more work on the tax side of moving to a place like a Panama, Malaysia, somewhere in the Gulf where you're not going to get a passport. So there's a trade-off there. Bottom line is, if you have enough money that you can bring in from before you move there that you could live on for those 5 years, potentially you would have no additional tax other than the money that you need to pay yourself in the salary if you're going through the business formation route. You can also dramatically minimize your tax. Well, let's say you have a business that makes $1 million a year, and you're like, okay, I got 65,000 euros left from my salary that I'm paying myself. I got to top it up with an extra 100 grand. The 100 grand comes in, it gets taxed at 52%, but the other 900 grand, right? So $1 million in profit minus 100 you remitted. The other 900,000 can stay somewhere else, be invested, be kept in the bank, do whatever you want with it, and that remains untaxed. And so what I've told you about non-dom programs for years is the delta between how much you need to live on and how much you earn is important in a non-dom program. But the benefit here is money you've accumulated before you move is good. So there's two angles for a passport like this. I could say to someone who's just starting out, hey, go there before your taxes get too high, put in your 5 years, get the citizenship. I could also tell someone, accumulate a lot of tax-free capital before you move that you can remit to where your tax burden is limited to that salary. By the way, from my perspective, if you could live at a place like that and pay 35,000 euros in tax, you're not going to pay more tax than everybody. There's plenty of people who earn a lot more than that, but you're going to pay more tax than the vast majority of people. And you can feel good. Hey, I paid my share of the roads and the bridges, and I have no problem with that, by the way. I don't think you have to pay zero tax. I think if you can pay some kind of fixed sum of tax, whether it's through a non-dom program like this or a lump sum program in a country like Italy, hey, you've paid into it. I don't think you should say, hey, my business makes $10 million a year and I'm going to pay $5 million in tax. You ain't getting $5 million in roads and bridges. And if you're moving to a new country, they didn't help you build that business. And so I think a non-dom program reflects that. So you're pairing a non-dom program with a 5-year naturalization program. Italy, where they have a lump sum tax program, it's 200,000 euros a year now for you, just for you. They are looking at potentially shortening the naturalization timeline from 10 to 5, which would match Ireland. That's not guaranteed yet. Either way, you'd still have to learn Italian. Whereas in Ireland, you already speak English if you're watching this. And so compared to other tax-friendly places, Ireland has a shorter naturalization timeline, and you don't have the requirement to learn a new language. And so, compared to, let's say, a Portugal Golden Visa, that's going to be a little bit easier on the language side. I mean, even if you go through, and we've got a process now where we can help you, get a language certificate in Portugal if you get the Golden Visa, you still got to put in the time, right? And so it's a matter of time versus money. These are all the factors that go into it. But the bottom line is, for a lot of people who are looking for a soft landing to move somewhere else, they don't want to move to a crazy different time zone. If you're from anywhere in Europe, Africa, or North America, or Latin America, I mean, it's not going to be that much of a different time zone to manage. If you're from the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, it's not going to be that much different of a culture. I know people, bag on Ireland a lot. A lot of it is, housing is expensive. It is in short supply. You don't have to live in Dublin. It certainly is much cheaper if you don't live in Dublin. And I think there's some beautiful parts all over the country. One of the most beautiful countries out there, quite frankly. It's not the cheapest place to live. But if you're looking for a top tier passport, I mean, you could go to Malta, and we help clients. They spend about $1 million. They go to Malta for a few weeks. In 18 months, they have their passport. That's another consideration. But if you're like, I don't want to spend $1 million, but I also don't want to move somewhere and pay high taxes, but I want a top quality, I don't want to just rely on a Caribbean citizenship. I want visa-free access back to the U.S. I mean, Ireland ticks all those boxes. You pay with your time. You spend your time in Ireland a majority of the year. And in the 5th year, you pretty much are there the whole year. So it is a time commitment. But it's not a tax commitment. It's not a cultural or a language commitment. For some folks, that ticks the boxes. And so, to me, that's an opportunity worth considering. Now, here's the deal. We've helped people with plans to move to over 31 different tax-friendly countries. We've helped people get passports by descent. To some extent through naturalization. We have people who live places and they want to get naturalized. We help people with golden visas and citizenship by investment. We have this sort of one-stop shop of experience of how do you put these things together. And this is an example of a program where you put two different things together and it can work out for a certain kind of person who wants a certain outcome. If you hire us, you pay us a fee. And we are going to go through and we're going to assign you to someone who's going to look at everything that you've got going on from a number of different perspectives and say, okay, here's what we need to do. And then we're going to get your feedback, and then we're going to refine, and then we're going to finalize over time a plan of action globally. You want to leave the U.S. What are the things that are important to you? Does Ireland tick those boxes? Does somewhere else tick them better? You want to go where you're treated best. And so we're going to look at, okay, by the way, you're not moving all your money to Ireland, so you need somewhere else to put your money. If you're saying, hey, I want to leave the U.S., I want my money out of the U.S., well, then you better find not only a place to live, but your money's not going to Ireland. Now, we always say, don't put your money and live in the same place. In this case, it's pretty disadvantageous to do it. Not just, it's not just not a great idea. It kind of screws up the whole plan. So these are all the kinds of things that you want to do. And I think we went through 50 different potential, tax experts in Ireland. It is a high bar to get some of these guys to do business with you. I mean, it is one of the hardest places to be onboarded as a client. I mean, there is more KYC. There is more due diligence. They are particular. I mean, there is some effort involved. But I think we called 50 different firms. 4 could help the kind of clients that we work with, and 2 would. And we picked one. And I talked to one of the guys. We've had a really good experience with them. That would be one of the outsourced vendors that we would help coordinate with if you hired us. And there could be a guy in the U.S. who helps you do your exit taxes. And there could be, someone where you're moving your company in Hong Kong or, the British Virgin Islands or the Cayman Islands or wherever. I mean, so you want someone who has access to all these different pieces. You go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. We can help you. We've worked with folks up to in the multi-billions, but we ask you to have $1 million in liquid assets to be a client, or if you're just starting out, $500,000 in income if you don't meet that net worth requirement. So you don't have to be a multi-billionaire to work with us. Certainly, this is a place that's more expensive than a lot of other places that we talk about, but there's an outcome that you get that top tier, what we call Tier A passport, that if you're American but you don't want to be in the future, I know Irish folks who used to be American, they still go back to the United States. No problems. There's a few more things they need to keep in mind as a non-U.S. citizen, but they can still go back to the U.S. assuming they keep those things in mind. So that can be a benefit. And again, maybe for some people, I don't want to spend 5 years of my life in that climate. I'd rather just go and donate money to a Caribbean country. I don't need to use a U.S. visa-free travel. Great. Well, if you go and hire the guy in Ireland, he's going to sell you in Ireland. If you hire us, we're going to charge you a fee, and we're going to make that plan, and then we can execute that plan for you, where it's actually what works for you, not just one or two things that we happen to sell, which is the way most people work. Go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. We'd be happy to help you, whether it's getting Europe's best second passport for free, getting other European golden visas and passports, or going somewhere else entirely, as I have.
This is Bali. Is how to live like a king.